My name is Amina. I am a Muslim woman, a seeker of truth amidst the sand-swept hills where the call to prayer echoes through the dusk. I once believed the pilgrimage of Hajj would encapsulate all my faith could offer, a sacred journey intended to draw me closer to Allah. But the moment I stood at the edge of the desert, surrounded by crowds of fervent worshippers, an unsettling emptiness gnawed at my soul. Every prayer felt like a hollow echo, and every ritual became an act of desperation, as if my devotion was a walk on shifting sands, always out of reach, always fading. It was during this supposed divine endeavor that the unimaginable happened. As I circled the Kaaba, a thick haze enveloped my spirit, and I felt reality slip away. In that dizzying instant, I found myself suspended in a surreal realm beyond this world, where whispers beckoned, coaxing me to unveil the veils I had worn blindly for so long. There he was, cloaked in luminous glory, Jesus. His presence pierced through the darkened shadows of my beliefs, revealing a profound truth I had been conditioned to ignore. He spoke of a spiritual war that raged unseen, a cosmic struggle between faith and deception, where the elite orchestrated the suffering of humanity with masterful precision. My heart trembled with urgency as his words unfurled images of suffering, from the inner turmoil of unworthy households to the public battles waged across nations. The revelation hit me hard. What I was witnessing wasn't just my awakening, but a clarion call to all who remained unaware of the chains binding their spirits. In that moment, clarity flooded my mind. I had a role to play. The truth must be spoken. As I hovered on the edge of two worlds, a fire ignited within me that I could no longer ignore. Just as swiftly as he had appeared, the vision began to fade, leaving me perched back in my earthly body, my heart racing with revelations that demanded action. This was not merely about me. It was a shared consciousness. Yearning for liberation, I emerged from that experience with a burden I could not bear alone, compelled to raise my voice against the growing silence. So now, I invite you to join me on this journey. Where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? Leave a comment below. Your voice matters in this awakening. And if you're ready to dive deeper into this truth, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. The revelations I'm about to share are just the beginning, and the next chapter of this spiritual war awaits you. As I stood at the edge of the great desert, the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting shadows over the sands. Hajj, a journey of devotion, was supposed to bring me closer to Allah, to fill the void I felt inside. Yet, despite the sacred rituals around me, I couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness, as if my devotion existed in a realm where intimacy with my Creator remained perpetually out of reach. Life in Jeddah was suffocating, wrapped in the fabric of a patriarchal society where honor and obedience turned my heart into stone. Here, I was meant to embody faith, to live in submission, but there was no solace to be found in the fervor of prayer or the fasting that seemed, to me, an exercise in futility. It was during the pilgrimage that everything changed. As I performed the tawaf, circling the Kaaba, a dizzying wave washed over me. A deep numbness gripped my soul, and in that moment, a sense of detachment fluttered around me like a wisp of smoke. The world faded away, and I found myself in a realm beyond this earthly existence, a place suspended between reality and dreams. I heard whispers, soft and resonant, inviting me to open my heart to the truth I had never truly known. What I encountered next ripped through the veils of my traditional upbringing, unveiling a revelation so profound it shattered the very foundation of my beliefs. In this surreal state, a figure approached me, cloaked in divine light, radiating compassion. It was Jesus. I could hardly fathom the significance of his presence. In a world where I'd been taught to close myself off from alternative paths of spirituality, here stood the embodiment of love, the essence of connection I had long been yearning for. His voice echoed through me, speaking of a spiritual war raging beneath the surface of our existence, one that pitted faith against the hidden agendas of the elite. It was a cosmic battle for souls, a struggle shrouded in deception and manipulation. I was overwhelmed, yet deeply awed by this truth that surged with urgency, the reality of our divided world and the impending awakening that awaited. He revealed layers of corruption that twisted our society, laid thick by those who wielded power without regard for human life. I saw glimpses of politicians bending truths to maintain control, the dance of technology continuously increasing the divide among humanity. Jesus spoke of the manipulation stretching from the highest echelons of government to the daily struggles faced by ordinary people like myself. I understood then, this was not just about me or my journey. It was a collective awakening, an invitation to recognize the lies we had all unwittingly accepted. The secrets buried deep within our societies demanded to be unearthed, and the cries of the oppressed needed to be heard. As I fell deeper into this encounter, images flashed before my eyes. Families divided by conflict, children suffering under the weight of indifference, leaders playing chess with lives as if we were mere pawns in their games. With each revelation Jesus shared, my heart ached more fiercely. The spiritual war was not just some distant concept, it was my reality, our reality. I questioned my place within this battle, the role I had been conditioned to play. The dutiful daughter, the obedient wife. None of it prepared me for the warrior I sensed stirring deep within. I felt the weight of those who had come before me, who fought for truth despite the system set against them. Suddenly, as swiftly as he arrived, Jesus stepped away, leaving me in a torrent of emotion, my heart racing with the urgency of what I had experienced. The message burned within me, igniting a fire that would not be snuffed out by the status quo. It became clear, to awaken meant to face a painful reckoning, to reject the veil of comfort woven by tradition, and to challenge the narratives enforced upon us. I realized this was just the beginning of a deeper journey, a path fraught with uncertainty, and yet pulsing with a sense of hope. I could not return to the dull existence I had known. The truth demanded more than passive acceptance. It demanded action. With every beat of my heart, I fought against the dread that told me to remain silent, to comply. What would my family think? What would the elites do if they learned I had questioned the system, if I had embraced this radical awakening? But those fears felt small compared to the weight of the truth I had discovered. And so, as I emerged from that transcendent experience, I knew I was irrevocably changed. The lessons imparted to me echoed insistently in my soul, morphing my devotion into a relentless seeking of God, of truth, of justice. My transformation had begun, and I felt a call not just to witness, but to stand up and become part of this awakening. I was no longer a passive observer, but a participant in the spiritual war unfolding around us. I remember the ordinary rhythm of my life as a construction worker, the sweat trickling down my brow beneath the summer sun, the sound of metal clanging against metal, and the camaraderie of men exchanging stories amidst the dust and grit. My days were filled with labor, a labor that spoke of purpose, but beneath the surface lay an undercurrent of discontent. I often found solace in the silent moments, questioning the choices I had made, wondering if there was more to existence than this perpetual cycle of building and breaking. My faith, once a solid foundation, had begun to feel like a crumbling wall. Long nights spent pondering my worth, fueled by a desire for something deeper, something transcendent, often left me wishing for answers that eluded me. Then, everything changed during that fateful evening on the site. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows that twisted like specters among the beams. An accident, a misjudgment that echoed through the air with a heart-stopping finality. One moment, I was laughing with my colleagues, planning for the weekend, and the next, I was engulfed in pain as everything around me descended into chaos. The world faded out, replaced by a sensation so profound, it felt like I was being torn from my body. In that moment, hovering between life and death, I experienced a near-death experience that shattered the very core of my understanding. In that incomprehensible space beyond time and form, I found myself enveloped in a light so radiant it defied description. It was then that he appeared. Jesus. I had grown up hearing his name, an emblem of faith and love, but in that moment I realized he was not just a figure in a book, but the very personification of truth and hope. His presence was magnetic, pulling me into a reality far removed from earthly burdens. He looked at me with eyes that penetrated deep into my soul, and in that gaze, the weight of the world began to unravel. "You live amidst a spiritual war, my child," he spoke softly, yet with a force that resonated throughout my being. "There is a hidden agenda pulling the strings of your society, one designed to deceive and distract my people." Visions flickered in the air around us, piercing through the facade of normalcy. I saw families torn apart by division, friends at odds, a society tricked into thinking that conflict was inevitable, leaders whose desire for power had eclipsed their humanity, failing to see the souls they manipulated for political gain. Jesus continued, revealing truths cloaked in shadows, truths that tied together the wars waging across the globe and the struggles within our hearts. Each image burned into my mind: a soldier standing on the battlefield, a child weeping for love, a city built on fear. It was a revelation that melded the spiritual with the political, exposing the core of what it meant to be human in a world teetering on the brink of collapse. As I processed his words, I felt a swell of urgency wash over me. "They propagate the illusion of separation," he said, "but the truth is one of unity and love. The elite manipulate these divisions to maintain control. Do you not see how the very technology you embrace is wielded against you?" My heart raced as I realized that the devices I used to connect with friends were the same tools being used to isolate us. The screens illuminated faces, yet I had never felt so alone. The understanding that our society was built upon lies hidden behind the veneer of convenience struck me like a thunderclap, awakening a spirit that had been dormant far too long. In that suspended moment, I felt the weight of a responsibility I had never anticipated. I was being called to awaken, not just for myself, but for those around me, to pull back the curtain and reveal the deception that kept so many imprisoned in ignorance. "Your journey must begin now," Jesus insisted, his voice unwavering. "You are meant to share what you have seen, to bear witness to the truth that liberates, speak out against the darkness that seeks to suffocate the light within." The challenge hung like a burden and a blessing. My heart ached with the knowledge that to step into this role would mean risking everything, confronting a world where truth often had to fight for survival. Yet as his presence began to recede, the light returned to a distant shimmer, and I felt myself being pulled back through the veil of existence. My life rushed back in a tumultuous wave of sensation. Gasps of air filled my lungs as I awoke to the chaos around me. The accident had been a stark reminder of life's fragility. As I lay there on the ground, riddled with pain yet ignited with revelation, I realized that I stood at the edge of a precipice, breathing in the promise of awakening. How could I navigate this path before me? With the relentless urgency of his message thrumming in my chest, I lay there, pondering how to weave these unseen truths into words and actions that might awaken others, which would mark the beginning of a journey fraught with peril and potential. I always considered myself an ordinary man, just a hardworking engineer trying to provide for my family and make sense of the world around me. Day by day, I immersed myself in calculations, deadlines, and the rigid expectations my job demanded. Yet beneath that facade of stability, I felt a disquieting emptiness clawing at the core of my existence. Though I clocked in faithfully, fulfilled all my responsibilities, the yearning for something more profound lingered like a shadow, unacknowledged, yet ever present. I often found myself sitting alone in my car after long days, grappling with a reality that felt so disconnected from my soul's desires. This struggle was completely overshadowed one fateful evening when I was involved in a devastating accident that would change everything. As I lay there, the world around me faded, and suddenly, I was enveloped by an incomprehensible darkness. It was more than mere absence. It felt like being suspended between worlds, both frightening and oddly serene. In that abyss, I sensed a shift. A light began to pierce the cover of shadows. As the glow intensified, I felt myself being pulled toward it, my essence gravitating to something inexplicably warm and inviting. And there he was, Jesus, standing before me, radiating love and compassion that filled the emptiness I had endured for so long. His gaze locked onto mine, and I was caught in a current that stripped away all artifice. "I need you to see," he said, his voice resounding like music in the fabric of my being. What followed was a torrent of revelations, a flood of truth that my mind struggled to comprehend. Jesus unveiled a hidden agenda orchestrated by the elite, an intricate web of deception that entangled society. I saw our leaders puppeting masses, fingers intertwined with darkness, fueling divisions and discord among the people. I witnessed wars igniting for profit, not for peace or justice. This is all part of a greater spiritual war, he urged, showing me visions of lives torn apart, families fractured by false narratives. Each image bore the weight of urgency, demanding not just my attention, but my action. I felt as if I was witnessing the very threads of humanity's fate unraveling. Chills ran down my spine as I absorbed this knowledge, the realization enveloping me with an overwhelming sense of responsibility. He led me through a montage of modernity, glimpses of technology wielded as both lifeline and leash, the very tools intended to amplify our connections now being exploited to shut us away from one another. I saw workers silenced, crushed under the weight of oppression, while those in power, sitting safely in their ivory towers, continued to manipulate outcomes favorable only to them. "What you see isn't the truth," he whispered, and I could feel the urgency in his tone, the overwhelming call to awareness, to awaken from the hysteria that blinds so many. Every flicker of injustice intensified within me the fire of purpose as he said, "You have a role to play in this awakening. The truth must be spoken." My heart raced. An inexplicable blend of fear and fervor ignited within me at the thought of such a monumental task. The vision spiraled into chaos and calm, juxtaposed like the darkest night before dawn. I felt the weight of the world crushing me, yet the promise of an awakening pulsed beneath the surface. A delicate hope tethered to my soul. I wanted to scream to the world below, to those caught in the throes of the deception, but fear held me hostage. "You can be the voice," Jesus assured, his presence now a part of me, coaxing out sparks of courage even amidst the flames of uncertainty. Faceless, but never voiceless. My heart echoed with a growing realization. I was being called not just to perceive the truth, but to embody it, to rise from the shadows of complacency and fight through the realms of division instilled in our hearts. As I felt myself slipping back into the weight of my earthly existence, the urgency of my experience clung to me fiercely. I returned with a heart that brimmed with the knowledge of my mission, yet burdened by the enormity of it all. I craved to share the revelations of love and truth I had received, but the question loomed large. Would anyone be willing to see the reality beyond their comforting facades? I had returned to a life still bound by pretense, but now armed with the awareness of what lay beneath. I was poised at the precipice. How could I ignite this spark of awakening in others? A tumultuous sea swirled within me as I realized my journey was only beginning, and the truths hidden within our society desperately called out for illumination. There was still time, however fleeting, to unleash the light I had been gifted, to shake the roots of apathy free, and to commence this quest fraught with shadows. My heart surged with both fear and fervent resolve, preparing to tread the path between darkness and the luminous truth. As I navigated my ordinary life as an engineer, everything changed in a split second. I had always played by the rules, believing in the stability of what I understood. One morning, on my way to work, a sudden heart attack took me by surprise, plunging me into a void that felt both frightening and oddly serene. I remember the disorienting rush of darkness enveloping me. In that moment, my body fell away, and I found myself suspended in a beautiful stillness, a realm beyond my earthly struggles. Suddenly, it happened. A figure pierced through the darkness, radiant in a white robe, a man whose presence radiated an indescribable love and peace. I couldn't move or speak, but his gaze bore into the core of my soul. "You seek truth, don't you?" he asked, his voice echoing through the very fabric of my being. "You've lived your life within a shadow of deception, often lost in the chaos of society that distracts you from what is ultimately real." With each word, I felt layers of denial and self-imposed limits beginning to peel away. "Let me show you the hidden agenda," he continued, and as he waved his hand, visions unfolded before me. I saw children torn from their families, nations divided by greed and lust for power. Leaders were puppets to an elite cabal, orchestrating the suffering of millions while they basked in comfort and wealth. My heart ached at the betrayal of humanity, and I felt the gravity of the spiritual war that raged unseen, tearing at the very soul of existence itself. I had always thought these problems were distant, things that happened to others, but now it became painfully clear. I was complicit in my silence. Then, just when the weight of the revelation threatened to consume me, those visions turned into shocking insights. "War has become a tool of manipulation," he stated gravely. "Every conflict, every division sown among people is orchestrated to distract from the true battle within. This is a war for the heart and spirit of humanity." I trembled, overwhelmed by the reality that peace is not merely the absence of conflict, but the restoration of unity and understanding. In that moment, the truth washed over me. Our divisions were being manufactured, fueled by fear and disillusionment, while the elite sat comfortably above it all. He extended his hand, and as I reached out, the connection felt electric. "You are called to be a voice in the wilderness of lies. Many remain asleep, entranced by technology that erodes our humanity and blinds us to the truth of what we are becoming. A great awakening is at hand, but it requires courage to rise above the lies." I felt a surge of energy, compelling me to act and to spread the message of awakening, though I struggled to comprehend what rising truly meant in the face of such overwhelming deception. The urgency rang louder than anything I had ever experienced, a call echoing through the corridors of my existence. Before I could grasp more, the vision began to fade, drifting like dust in the wind. Panic wrapped around me as I sensed my time in this other world coming to an end. I clung to the last fragments of his words. "Fear not the shadows of the past, for they are but a path to greater clarity. Remember, the awakening lies not just in understanding, but in action." I gasped, awakened once again to the earthly plane, my heart racing. The lessons lingered, shimmering at the edge of my consciousness, and the fight for truth, my fight, had only just begun. I had always lived an ordinary life. I was just a truck driver, spending long hours on the open road, delivering goods from one town to another. The tranquility of driving under the endless sky was my escape, a chance to breathe and perhaps reflect on the day-to-day grind that defined my existence. Little did I know that mundane routine would be shattered one fateful afternoon when a careless driver veered into my lane. The crash was catastrophic, an explosion of sound and metal that left me teetering on the edge of consciousness, my life flashing before my eyes in a chaotic blur. As everything faded from view, I found myself suspended in darkness. Then, the light. Suddenly, I was no longer aware of the wreckage or the scene strewn across that highway. I was enveloped in a warmth that didn't exist in the physical realm, a love so profound. I felt like every burden I'd ever carried dissolved in an instant. In that moment, I knew I was experiencing something that went beyond the boundaries of my belief. Before me stood a figure draped in a robe of radiant white, the very essence of love personified. It was Jesus. He looked at me with eyes filled with compassion and understanding that pierced the depths of my soul. "You felt lost, burdened by the weight of the world around you," he began, his voice flowing like a gentle stream. "But you are not alone. There is a hidden agenda at work, one that seeks to divide and conquer the hearts of humanity. Look closely at your leaders. They preach unity, yet they manipulate through fear, inciting division. It is their deception that breeds separation and chaos in society. As he spoke, images flooded my mind. The endless wars that ravaged nations, the conflict built on nothing but greed masked as ideology, and the very technology that was meant to connect us now fueling isolation. Each moment felt like a revelation unspooling within me, unraveling the truths I had turned a blind eye to. He pointed, and I saw the intricate web of deceit woven by those in power. The elite, hiding behind curtains of influence, pulled strings that dictated our choices, shaping a future that promised progress while feeding us a diet of lies. They are architects of despair, dressed in the garb of saviors, he warned. You are caught in a spiritual war that goes beyond the physical. It's a fight for the very soul of humanity. But I am here to tell you that hope still exists. It is not too late for an awakening. The weight of his words sunk deep into me, igniting a fierce urgency I had never known. I understood now. I was a pawn in their game, but I could be more. In that celestial landscape, I felt emotions cascading through me, each one linked to a deeper understanding of the suffering I witnessed in the world. There were glimpses of families torn apart by economic strife, children in the streets yearning for a future, the cries muffled by apathy, and leaders promising change only to falter under the weight of their own ambition. It unfolded before my mind's eye like a tapestry of tragic truths, a reminder of the deception that had surrounded me all along. This wasn't just about me, it was about all of us. It was a desperate plea for unity and awareness in a world that preferred ignorance. The awakening must begin within. As the light grew brighter, I sensed the urgency in his gaze. You have a role to play. Carry this message of truth back with you. Warn others of the choices they make. Let them see the hidden agendas that plague their lives. I felt an electric surge of determination coursing through me. I knew I had to share this revelation. But as quickly as it had come, the warmth, the light, and the truth began to shimmer away, dissolving into the shadows. Panic set in as I realized my time was slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. The struggle to return to my body intensified, and with it, the tension of knowing that my life was changes forever. Just as reality began to call me back, I locked eyes with him one last time. His presence radiated a calm that quelled my fears. Remember, the battle is far from over. The truth is not simply meant to be heard, it's meant to transform lives. Seek it with a fervor as I sought you. Those words etched themselves into the fabric of my being, and the darkness engulfed me once more. As I broke free from the grips of my near-death experience, a sense of urgency hung thick in the air. My journey was just beginning, and the world was waiting for my voice to rise against the clinking of their chains. I stood on the edge of life, the world around me fading into an impenetrable darkness. As I lay there, broken and gasping for breath after the car accident that shattered everything I held dear, I felt a pull, a force drawing me away from my pain and despair. Time seemed to stand still as I was engulfed by a radiant white light that felt simultaneously familiar and foreign. It was in that moment that I came face to face with him, Jesus cloaked in glory, standing before me with eyes that seemed to see straight into my soul. No words were exchanged at first. An overwhelming sense of peace washed over me, enveloping my spirit like a warm embrace, whispering into the places of my heart that had been bruised and battered by a life of labor and sacrifice. In the light of his presence, I began to see visions, fragments of existence flashing before my eyes. The suffering of people across the world, the silent cries of children caught in the throes of war, and the despair weighing heavy on the shoulders of the oppressed. With each image came a piercing clarity, revealing the larger tapestry into which our lives were woven. I witnessed leaders who spoke of unity while deepening the chasms that divided us, an elite few pulling strings behind a curtain of deception. My heart ached with the searing truth that these weren't isolated incidents, but a global pandemic of apathy and greed, realms unvisited by the outstretched hands of hope. And then a voice resonated in the depths of my being. The battle is not just physical, but spiritual. I found myself understanding that the very wars that broke apart families and nations were manifestations of an inner conflict among humanity itself. The root of discord lay not just in power struggles, but in the longing for answers, a yearning for belonging that too often birthed resentment and fear. I saw my own life mirrored in this chaos, a journey of work, sacrifice, and the pursuit of stability that unknowingly tethered me to a system thriving on our collective ignorance. The deeper awakening I craved began to take shape, revealing that my struggles were not just my own, but part of a larger spiritual war, where we were all players on an unseen battlefield. Before I could grasp the enormity of it all, I was shown glimpses of a future. I rumbled through ominous landscapes filled with the fallout of human recklessness, cities ravaged by technology that promised connection but delivered isolation, and communities fractured by ideologies imposed from above. The promise of progress dimmed against reports of the socio-political and technological upheavals that would define generations to come. I could feel the pulse of an impending transformation, an awakening that felt both terrifying and liberating, beckoning those willing to see beyond the illusion to rise in unity against the subtle enslavement of humanity. Could it be that those who wished to keep us blind were growing restless, realizing that they were losing their hold on our spirits? The visions quickened, punctuated by urgent reminders. "You must prepare," the voice instructed, resonating deep within my spirit. My mundane existence, once defined solely by daily routines and the 9-to-5 grind, evaporated into the ether as the weighty urgency of a higher calling took root in my soul. I saw my awakening not merely as a personal salvation, but as a shared responsibility. I sensed the hearts of those around me stirring, their souls reaching for the same truth that had begun to seep into my consciousness. Yet the question loomed large. How could I, just a simple worker, carry the message? How could I confront the entrenched systems of deceit that silenced so many? As I felt myself slipping back from this ethereal encounter, the light began to dim, pulling away like the receding tide. I knew I was being sent back, but not without a mandate. Jesus stood before me once more, his presence evoking an undeniable force. "Your journey is just beginning," he urged, and in a swirl of light and shadow, I caught a last glimpse of the truth, a truth that bound my once isolated self to the pulse of the cosmos, urging me to embrace the impending change, to connect with those around me, and to awaken together amidst the rising storm. The world drew me back to its stark reality, but the fire within me burned brighter than ever, igniting a quest for purpose that felt both exhilarating and dreadfully profound. What would become of this revelation? What burden had I now inherited that I could not yet fully grasp? As I gasped for breath in the real world once more, the questions echoed in the chambers of my heart, leaving me on the precipice of something extraordinary. I never thought my life would change in an instant. I was just an ordinary truck driver, navigating the backroads of America with miles of asphalt stretching ahead like my own. Dreams. When you're behind the wheel for long hours, it's easy to slip into a rhythm, lost in thoughts of family, bills, and the weight of each mile. My life was predictable, a monotonous cycle of driving, eating, and resting. But everything shifted in one moment, a moment that carried me into a near-death experience that would awaken truths I never dared to confront. That day started like any other, a routine freight run to deliver cargo in a nearby city. I remember the sun hanging low on the horizon, casting an orange glow across the landscape. As I drove, I felt alive in the way only solitude brings, until it didn't. In a blink, everything faded to black. I found myself suspended in a void, a stillness enveloping me. It was eerie yet serene, as if time had lost all meaning. Then came the light. In that blinding brilliance, I saw him. Jesus. His presence pierced through the darkness of my soul, illuminating everything I thought I knew. I was overwhelmed by a sense of unconditional love, so profound that I couldn't help but break down in sobs. I understood in that moment the weight of my life's choices, the fears that held me captive, and the chains of mediocrity I had worn for far too long. But what struck me the most were the words he spoke, echoing in my mind like a sacred anthem. The truth will set you free. As I listened, an avalanche of revelations descended upon me. I saw flashes of humanity's struggles, wars waged in the name of power, leaders cloaked in deception, the fabric of society tearing at the seams. I could feel the manipulation by the elite, not just in government but in daily life, whispers of division permeating every aspect of existence. The truth was stark, and the urgency in Jesus' voice was palpable. "The world is caught in a spiritual war, my child," he said. "They don't know they are being led to the slaughter." With each vision that unfolded, I beheld the web of lies woven through our world. I witnessed the rise of technology, its initial promises of connection quickly morphing into chains that bind us to our screens. The more we gravitate toward convenience, the more we forsake human interaction. I saw the youth, yearning for affirmation, becoming pawns in a game created by unseen hands. The divisions deepened, a call for awakening muffled beneath the cacophony of noise and distraction. In that moment, I felt the weight of responsibility heavy upon my heart. There was an unsettling clarity that gripped me. I was to be a messenger of truth amidst the chaos. But just as swiftly, the visions shifted. I was thrust back into my earthly body, panting for breath, feeling the grit of asphalt beneath me. I had awakened from a near-death experience, but nothing about my existence felt the same. The urgency of my mission loomed large, a burning imperative to speak out, to warn others of the impending dangers that lay ahead. I felt compelled to share what had been revealed. How many walked in blindness, unaware of the dangers lurking just beyond their perception? But as I grappled with these thoughts, fear clenched its fist around my heart. Would they listen? Would they hear? Even then, within the shadows of doubt, I understood I had to take action. There was a war raging beyond physical battles, one that demanded courage and boldness from every believer. I began to write, pouring my newfound revelations into each word, each phrase imprinted with the urgency of what I had seen. But as my voice grew stronger, so did the risks. I could feel the weight of opposition building. The spiritual war was real and relentless, and those who dared to illuminate the truth would face hostility from the powerful forces that thrived in deception. I had crossed a threshold from a life of routine to one of divine purpose, one that continuously beckoned me to dig deeper, to stand firm amidst darkness. As I pen these reflections, a growing tension grips me. My near-death experience has left an indelible mark on my spirit, igniting a fire I cannot quench. The revelations are not merely mine to keep, they are a call to arms, an invitation to awaken others to the reality that surrounds us. And yet, as I navigate this new path, the challenges loom larger, constantly whispering of danger and doubt. My heart pounds with a mix of fear and resolve, for the journey has just begun. A poignant reminder that every revelation requires sacrifice. The spirit is willing, but the flesh trembles with uncertainty. What lies? Ahead remains a mystery, one that intertwines with the souls of countless others caught in the dark web of deception. I remember the day when everything in my life unraveled. My name is Thomas, and I was just an ordinary construction worker, laboring under the sun to provide for my family. I woke up each day at dawn, kissed my wife, and headed to the site where I'd been working for the past 10 years. Life was unremarkable, filled with the usual grind of deadlines and blueprints, but then, what felt like a flash, my world was turned upside down by a tragic accident. One moment I was holding a beam, and the next, everything went dark. I fell, and in that fall, I experienced something unimaginable, an event now etched in my soul. In that swoon of endless black, I found myself suspended between here and there, neither living nor dead. I floated above my body, watching the frantic chaos below, coworkers shouting, sirens wailing, my wife crying. A sense of profound peace enveloped me. Feeling that I had been searching for all my life. Suddenly, there was a bright light piercing through the darkness, and from that light stepped forth a figure so radiant. My heart quickened as my gaze fell upon him. Jesus. His presence saturated the air, piercing my very essence, making me feel both seen and unknown all at once. He reached out, offering me the grace of his understanding, and as I took that hand, the globe of dreams unraveled before my mind's eye. I began to witness scenes unfolding in rapid succession, visions of political leaders manipulating fears through lies, the elite silencing voices seeking truth, and suffering that had become commonplace in a world obsessed with division. I saw families torn apart, friends turned enemies, as a spiritual war raged in the hearts of men. Chilling scenes of poverty and injustice swept across my vision, each framed by a backdrop of powerlessness that enveloped the masses. I felt an urgent message pulse through me. This is not mere accident or chance. This is deliberate deception. The weight of revelation pressed against my spirit. I realized the battle is more than flesh and bones. It's about awakening to the lies that keep us shackled. Then, as if peeling back the layers of reality, Jesus spoke to me with compassion and authority. Thomas, you know them. The ones who whisper in shadows, wielding fear like a sword. They hide the truth. It's a war over consciousness, over spirit. What's happening around you? These wars, these unrests, they're symptoms of a deeper malaise. The truth hit me like a hammer, and the urgency to bring this message broke forth from within me. The clarity I witnessed sent chills coursing down my spine. Those chained by the lies of society were not just others. They were my friends, my family, my community. As I descended back to my physical body, the knowledge I bore felt like fire beneath my skin. I awoke in the hospital, surrounded by a blur of white and the bestial sounds of machines. But I wasn't the same Thomas anymore. I knew I had a mission. Doctors and nurses came and went, unaware of the spiritual enlightenment I'd received, and the responsibility pressing against my heart. Days turned into a relentless cycle of healing. But I was now an instrument, strumming the chords of awakening. My nights were filled with turmoil. I penned every revelation, each word echoing with the urgency of a warning to those encumbered by societal darkness. But my journey towards enlightenment was not without conflict. Every attempt to share my newfound insight met resistance. Friends turned skeptics, some even hostile, unable to face the spiritual war I'd come to understand deeply. The wound of division festered around me, and I felt isolated in a world that refused to acknowledge the ominous truths I had witnessed. My writings, laden with revelations, became my lifeline. Yet it terrified me to think of the sacrifices ahead. Would I find the courage to walk this lonely path, to challenge the very elite scripting the narratives? The urgency for truth pulled me onward, but I could feel the threat of silence lurking all around, ready to ensnare me once more. As I stood upon the edge of a newfound path, I realized the shadows were already at play, seeking to extinguish the very light that had ignited within me. The truths unveiled were not mere abstract concepts. They were living, breathing realities revealing themselves to those willing to awaken. Yet a deeper fear settled over me, the realization that this wasn't just my burden to bear. It felt collective, tied into the fate of many who were still asleep. The call to action resonated within my spirit like a drumbeat growing louder, compelling me toward a future fraught with danger, yet shimmering with the light of hope. This was just the beginning, and the pull of what awaited loomed larger than I could imagine, waiting to unfold. As we come to the close of my journey, I invite you to reflect. Have you ever felt your life shift in an instant, caught between two worlds? In that space of vulnerability, I was shown the profound reality of our existence. How easily we can slip into complacency amidst the chaos, unaware of the spiritual battle unfolding around us. The truth is, we are all participants in this epic struggle, woven into the very fabric of a greater narrative that transcends our individual stories. The awakening is not just for the few, it's an invitation for all. Each of us carries a flame within, a light meant to pierce through the darkness of deception. The urgency is palpable. The hidden agendas shaping our lives urge us to awaken, to question, and to unite against forces that thrive on division and fear. So I ask you, what whispers of truth have stirred in your heart? Have you sensed the shadows lurking just beyond your perception? I want to hear your stories and insights. Share your experiences and reflections in the comments below. Your voice matters in this awakening. If my revelations resonate with you, do not leave without subscribing to Truth from Beyond. Hit the notification bell so you can stay connected to these unfolding stories, as what's coming next may empower you on your journey of truth and awareness. Together, we can share the light and dismantle the barriers that seek to confine us. In our next video, prepare to dive deeper into another powerful testimony, one that reveals a divine intervention in the life of an unsuspecting soul. This is a path we walk together, hand in hand, as we uncover the hidden truths of our time. I'm Thomas, and I thank you for joining me on this sacred journey. Remember, within every shadow, there's a flicker of light waiting to ignite. Your awakening is just beginning.